He saved the biker's life with his bare hands and vanished into the darkness. No one was supposed to notice a homeless kid like him. But when 300 bikers showed up at his shelter the next day, he realized some debts aren't meant to be forgotten. The night Kai saved a stranger's life, he was looking for aluminum cans. Not the most heroic beginning to a story, but that's how it happened. 16 years old, sleeping in an abandoned bus depot on the east side, and survival meant collecting enough recyclables to buy breakfast. The overpass near Highway 9 was usually good for it. Truckers tossed energy drinks out their windows, and morning commuters left coffee cups on the guardrails. Kai's sneakers crunched over broken glass as he climbed the embankment, his backpack already holding 7 cans. The freeway hummed below, a river of red taillights cutting through the October darkness. Cold air bit at his face, and he pulled his gray hoodie tighter, the same one he'd been wearing for 3 months, with the tear along the left pocket that he tried to stitch with dental floss. That's when he heard it. The scream of an engine pushed way too hard. Then the shriek of rubber losing its grip on asphalt. Kai spun toward the sound just as a motorcycle hit the overpass doing at least 70. The bike wobbled violently, the rider fighting for control, but the front wheel caught something, oil, water, maybe just bad luck, and the machine went down hard. Metal screamed against concrete. Sparks erupted like fireworks. The motorcycle and its rider tumbled across 2 lanes before slamming into the center barrier 50 feet below where Kai stood. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. Then Kai saw the flames. Small at first, just a flicker near the bike's engine. But growing. Fast. No, Kai's feet moved before his brain caught up. He half ran, half slid down the embankment, rocks skittering under his shoes. His heart hammered against his ribs. The rider was trapped. The motorcycle, a massive black beast with chrome pipes, had pinned the man's leg. He wore a leather jacket with some kind of patch on the back, and his helmet had cracked down the middle. The man's hands clawed weakly at the pavement, trying to drag himself free, but the bike was easily 400 pounds. The flames licked higher. Kai could smell gasoline. Hey, can you hear me? Kai dropped to his knees beside the man. The rider's eyes found Kai's through the broken helmet visor. They were gray, wide with pain and fear. Kid. Run. Not happening. Kai grabbed the motorcycle's handlebar and pulled. It didn't budge. His palms, already rough from living on the streets, burned against the hot metal. Come on. The fire reached the fuel line. Kai's mind raced. He couldn't lift the bike. The man was too heavy to drag out. And in about 30 seconds, they were both going to become part of the asphalt. Then he saw the concrete barrier, a jersey wall running along the shoulder, maybe 15 feet away. Listen to me, Kai said, gripping the man's jacket. When I lift this bike, you pull yourself free. You got it? Can't. Legs broken. Then you crawl on your elbows. I don't care. Just move. Kai didn't wait for agreement. He planted his feet, wrapped both arms around the motorcycle's frame, and lifted with everything he had. His back screamed. His vision went white at the edges. The bike rose 6 inches. Maybe 7. Now. Go. The man groaned but started pulling himself backward, dragging his shattered leg. Kai held on, muscles shaking, the heat from the engine searing through his hoodie. He could feel the fabric starting to melt against his forearms. The rider cleared the bike. Kai dropped it and grabbed the man under his arms. He pulled, stumbling backward, shoes slipping in motor oil and blood. 10 feet. The flames erupted higher, crawling toward the gas tank. 5 feet. The man was deadweight, semi-conscious now, mumbling something Kai couldn't understand. They reached the Jersey barrier just as the motorcycle exploded. The force of the blast threw them both against the concrete. Heat washed over Kai's back like a wave. He curled over the injured man, shielding him from debris as burning metal rained down onto the highway. Car horns blared. Brakes squealed. Someone was screaming. Kai lifted his head, ears ringing. The motorcycle was gone, just a twisted, burning skeleton in the middle of the highway. Traffic had stopped in both directions. People were getting out of their cars, phones raised, calling 911. The man beneath him coughed wetly. "Kid. Don't talk. Help's coming." Kai could already hear sirens in the distance, that distinctive wail cutting through the night. The man's hand, scraped bloody and missing 2 fingernails, grabbed Kai's wrist with surprising strength. Through the broken helmet, his gray eyes locked onto Kai's. "You got fireproof hands. Or something?" Kai glanced down. His palms were blistered, angry red welts rising across his skin. He'd feel that tomorrow. If he made it to tomorrow. "What's your name?" the man asked, his voice fading. "Doesn't matter." "Matters. To me." The sirens grew louder. Flashing lights appeared at both ends of the highway, coming fast. Kai looked at the approaching emergency vehicles, then back at the man. If he stayed, there would be questions. Police questions. Why was a teenage boy alone on a highway at 11 p.m.? Where were his parents? Why wouldn't he give his name? Questions led to social workers. Social workers led to the system. And the system led straight back to his father. "I have to go," Kai said. "Wait." But Kai was already moving. He scrambled over the Jersey barrier, ignoring the pain shooting through his burned hands, and ran for the embankment. Behind him, the man was shouting something, but Kai couldn't hear it over the sirens. He climbed fast, using the darkness as cover. At the top of the overpass, he paused, just once, to look back. The man was surrounded now: paramedics, firefighters, cops. An ambulance had backed up to the scene. They were cutting off his jacket, loading him onto a stretcher. He'd live. That was all that mattered. Kai pulled his hood up and disappeared into the night, his backpack of aluminum cans rattling against his spine. His hands throbbed with every heartbeat, and his hoodie was half melted across the sleeves, but he was alive. He didn't know that the man he'd saved was called Bear. He didn't know Bear was the sergeant-at-arms of the Iron Titans Motorcycle Club. And he definitely didn't know that in less than 24 hours, 300 bikers would be looking for him. All Kai knew was that he'd used up his luck for the month, and he still needed to find 3 more cans before the recycling center opened at dawn. He turned east, toward the bus depot, and walked into the darkness alone. Bear woke up to white ceiling tiles and the smell of disinfectant. His leg was suspended in some kind of medieval torture device, wrapped in enough bandages to mummify a pharaoh. Every breath felt like someone was driving nails through his ribs. But he was alive, which, given the last thing he remembered was his bike turning into a fireball, seemed like a minor miracle. "Easy, brother," a familiar voice cut through the fog. "Don't try to move." Bear turned his head, slowly, and found Reaper sitting in a chair beside the hospital bed. The Iron Titans president looked exactly like his road name suggested, 6'4", bald head covered in tattoos, arms like tree trunks crossed over his chest. Behind him stood 4 more members of the MC, still wearing their leather cuts despite the "No Gang Colors" signs plastered all over the hospital. "How bad?" Bear's voice came out like gravel. "Shattered femur, 3 broken ribs, concussion, second-degree burns on your back," Reaper ticked off on his fingers. "Doctors say you're lucky to be breathing. So you want to tell me how you got out from under a burning bike?" Bear closed his eyes, and the memory rushed back. The kid. Thin, maybe 16, wearing a gray hoodie. Hands that shook when he grabbed the motorcycle but didn't let go. Eyes that looked too old for his face. "There was a kid," Bear said. "Pulled me out. Saved my life. Highway Patrol didn't mention any kid. This from Chains, the club's vice president, who stepped closer to the bed. Said a bunch of drivers saw you pinned, but by the time they stopped, you were behind the barrier. Fire department figured you crawled there yourself. I had a broken leg and cracked ribs. How the hell was I gonna crawl anywhere? Bear tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain exploded through his chest. I'm telling you, there was a kid. Scrawny. Gray hoodie with a rip in it. Maybe 16, 17 inch. You were pretty out of it, Bear, Reaper said carefully. Paramedics said you were talking about fireproof hands and angels when they loaded you up. Bear's jaw tightened. I know what I saw. A nurse pushed through the door, clipboard in hand, and stopped when she saw the wall of bikers. Visiting hours are over. And there are way too many of you in here. We're family, Reaper said, not moving. Hospital policy says maximum 2 visitors for ICU patients. Then change the policy. The nurse, a tiny woman who couldn't have been more than 5 feet tall, planted her hands on her hips and stared down 6 leather-clad bikers without blinking. Out. Now. Or I call security. Reaper actually smiled. Yes, ma'am, he jerked his head at the others, who filed toward the door. But before leaving, he turned back to Bear. We'll find your kid. If he exists, we'll find him. He exists, Bear insisted. And when you find him, he's under our protection. Whatever he needs. You hear me? Reaper nodded once, then left. The nurse checked Bear's vitals, adjusted his 4, and was almost out the door when Bear called after her. Wait. Did I say anything else? When they brought me in? She paused, consulting her clipboard. According to the ER notes, you were pretty insistent about someone finding the kid with fireproof hands. You kept repeating that he couldn't just disappear. She looked up. You also said he ran when he heard the sirens. Why would he run if he saved you? Bear stared at the ceiling tiles. Why would a kid who just pulled off a rescue like that vanish the second help arrived? Why wouldn't he stick around to be called a hero, get his picture in the paper, maybe even get a reward? Unless he couldn't. Unless he was hiding from something. Or someone. What time is it? Bear asked. Almost 7 a.m. You've been in surgery for 4 hours. 7 a.m. The kid had been gone for 8 hours already. In a city this size, he could be anywhere. Could be in the next state by now if he was really running. But something told Bear the kid hadn't run far. The way he'd moved, the backpack he'd been wearing, those weren't the habits of someone passing through. That was someone who knew the streets. Someone who lived on them. After the nurse left, Bear lay in the dark and thought about the kid's hands. They'd been shaking when he grabbed the motorcycle, but they hadn't let go. And when he'd pulled Bear behind the barrier, those hands had been strong. Stronger than they should have been for someone that thin. Fireproof hands, Bear had said in his delirium. But what he'd meant was, hands that didn't quit, even when they were burning. By noon, Reaper had made calls to every chapter of the Iron Titans in the state. The word went out through the Brotherhood, find the kid who saved Bear. Gray hoodie, torn on the left side. 16 or 17. Last seen near the Highway 9 overpass. By 2 p.m., someone had checked traffic camera footage and gotten a blurry shot of a figure climbing the embankment, heading east. By 4 p.m., a prospect reported that east of Highway 9, there wasn't much except industrial wasteland, a few warehouses, and the old downtown district where the homeless shelters were. By 6 p.m., Reaper stood in Bear's hospital room with a map of the city spread across the bed. Kids probably at one of the shelters, Reaper said, tapping a cluster of marks downtown. Question is, how do we approach this without spooking him? Bear looked at the map, then at his president. How many brothers can you get together by tomorrow morning? Reaper's eyebrow rose. For what? To make sure that kid knows we're not the kind of people he needs to run from. Bear's voice was steady despite the pain medication making the room swim. Get everyone. Every chapter. I want him to see what family looks like. Reaper smiled slowly. You want to make a statement. I want to make a promise, Bear corrected. That kid walked through fire for me. Tomorrow, we return the favor. Kai's hands hurt like hell. He'd wrapped them in strips torn from an old t-shirt, but the blisters had burst during the night, and now the fabric stuck to his raw skin. Every time he moved his fingers, fresh pain shot up his arms. Still, he showed up at the Hope Street Youth Shelter at 11:30, right when they started serving lunch. Missing a meal wasn't an option. Not when you didn't know where the next one was coming from. The shelter was more crowded than usual. Kai counted at least 40 kids in the common room, way over capacity. Some he recognized from the streets, others were new faces. Everyone looked tired. Everyone looked hungry. Line forms at the kitchen window, called out Marcus, one of the regular volunteers. He was a good guy, mid-20s, studying social work at the community college. We've got beef stew today. Actual beef, not mystery meat, so count your blessings. Kai joined the line, keeping his wrapped hands shoved in his hoodie pocket. The less attention he drew, the better. Yo, Kai, a voice behind him. He turned to find Diego, a 17-year-old who'd been on the streets even longer than Kai. You hear about the bikers? What bikers? Man, where you been? Whole downtown's buzzing about it. Diego lowered his voice. Like hundreds of them, rolling through the district since early morning. Big dudes on Harleys, wearing matching jackets. My cousin said they're looking for someone. Kai's stomach tightened. Looking for who? Nobody knows. But people are freaked. Half the shops on Pine Street closed early. Mrs. Chen locked up her grocery store, and she never closes. The line moved forward. Kai grabbed a tray, trying to keep his expression neutral. Bikers looking for someone. It couldn't be connected to last night. Could it? No. No way. He'd been careful. Disappeared before the cops arrived. Nobody had seen his face clearly, it had been dark, and he'd kept his hood up. But his father had connections. Low-level ones, sure, but connections. What if? Next. Marcus's voice cut through his thoughts. Kai stepped up to the window, and Marcus ladled stew into a bowl. Then he stopped, eyes narrowing. Kai, what happened to your hands? Nothing. Just scraped them up. Let me see. I'm fine. Marcus set down the ladle. Let me see, or you don't eat. Kai glanced at the line behind him, felt everyone's eyes on his back, and slowly pulled his right hand from his pocket. The makeshift bandage was stained dark red in places, and the fabric had started to unravel. Marcus's expression shifted from concern to alarm. Jesus, kid. Those need proper treatment. Come on, I'm taking you to the clinic. No, Kai grabbed his tray with his good hand. I said I'm fine. Those could get infected. I said no. The common room went quiet. Kai felt his face flush. Drawing attention was exactly what he couldn't afford to do. Marcus held up his hands in surrender. Okay. Okay. But at least let me get you some clean bandages. We've got a first aid kit in the office. Before Kai could respond, the shelter's front door burst open. Jennifer, the shelter director, rushed in. Her usually neat gray hair was disheveled, and her face was flushed. Behind her came two more volunteers, both looking equally shaken. Everyone stay calm, Jennifer announced, though her voice was anything but calm. We're implementing our lockdown protocol. No one leaves the building until further notice. The room erupted in voices. What? Why? You can't keep us here. I got somewhere to be. Jennifer raised her hands for quiet. There's a situation developing outside. For your safety, we need everyone to remain inside until it's resolved. Diego leaned toward Kai. Told you. It's the bikers. Kai's pulse hammered in his ears. He set down his tray, appetite gone. What kind of situation? Someone called out. Jennifer hesitated. There's a large gathering of motorcycle club members in the district. The police are monitoring the situation, but until we know their intentions, this facility is on lockdown. Kai's mind raced. Motorcycle club. MC. The patch on the biker's jacket last night, he'd seen it clearly when he grabbed the man's shoulders. Some kind of logo with a skull and wings. Oh no. No, no, no. They weren't looking for just anyone. They were looking for him. But why? To silence him? To make sure he didn't talk about what he'd seen? Or worse, what if his father had somehow found out, had called in a favor with people who knew people, and now? Kai. Marcus was watching him closely. You okay? You look like you're gonna pass out. Bathroom, Kai managed. I need the bathroom. He didn't wait for permission. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring the voices calling after him, and made it to the bathroom just as his legs started shaking. He locked himself in a stall and sat on the closed toilet lid, head in his hands. This was it. Somehow, he'd gone from invisible to hunted in less than 24 hours. The smart thing would be to run. Slip out the back exit before the lockdown was fully in place, grab his stuff from the bus depot, and disappear. Maybe hop a freight train heading south. He'd done it before, he could do it again. But his hands throbbed with pain, his ribs ached from hauling a 400-pound motorcycle off a man twice his size, and he was so tired. So desperately tired of running. Outside, in the distance, Kai heard the rumble of engines. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Getting closer. The sound started just after dawn, a low rumble that rattled windows 3 blocks away. By 8 a.m., the first wave arrived. 20 motorcycles, riding 2 by 2, engines throttled down to a respectful growl. They parked in formation along Hope Street, kickstands down, engines off. By 9 a.m., there were 70. By 10 a.m., the number had grown to over 200, and the police had established a perimeter. Now, at 11:30, Officer Patricia Chen stood behind her patrol car and watched 300 bikers assemble in the most organized show of force she'd seen in 15 years on the job. This is insane, her partner muttered, hand resting on his radio. We should call in SWAT. And do what? Chen gestured at the bikers. They're not breaking any laws. They're parked legally, engines off, not blocking traffic. Hell, half of them are sitting on their bikes reading newspapers. It was true. The Iron Titans MC had arranged themselves in a massive semicircle around the Hope Street Youth Shelter, but they weren't being aggressive. They weren't revving engines or making threats. They were just there. Waiting. It was somehow more unnerving than if they'd been violent. Chen recognized the patches. Iron Titans, a legitimate MC, despite what the movie suggested. They ran charity toy drives, organized blood donation events, and yes, occasionally got into bar fights, but nothing that suggested they'd stage a siege on a homeless youth shelter. Lieutenant wants us to hold position, her partner said, lowering his radio. He's sending negotiators. Negotiators for what? They haven't made any demands. As if on cue, a black pickup truck pulled up to the police line. A massive bald man climbed out, 6'4", arms like tree trunks, wearing an Iron Titans president patch. He walked directly to Chen with his hands visible and empty. Officer, his voice was surprisingly calm. Name's Reaper. I'm president of the Iron Titans MC. I can see that, Chen said. Mind telling me why you've got an army parked outside a youth shelter? We're looking for someone. This isn't how you look for someone. This is how you start a panic. Reaper glanced back at his brothers, then at the shelter. Not trying to scare anyone. Trying to show we're serious. About what? About finding the kid who saved one of our own. Chen's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? Reaper pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. A burned-out motorcycle skeleton on Highway 9. Last night, our sergeant-at-arms crashed on the overpass. Bike pinned him, caught fire. He should have died. He swiped to another photo, this one of a man in a hospital bed, bandaged and bruised. But a teenager pulled him out. Lifted a 400-pound motorcycle with his bare hands and dragged Bear to safety before the tank exploded. And then? Kid vanished. Didn't stick around for paramedics, didn't give his name. Just disappeared. Reaper's jaw tightened. Bear woke up this morning with one thing on his mind, find that kid and thank him. Make sure he's okay. Chen studied the photo. So you brought 300 bikers to a homeless shelter because? Traffic cameras showed the kid heading east from the crash site. East of Highway 9, there's not much except warehouses and this district. We checked with the other shelters, nobody matching his description. But someone at the Grace Mission said they saw a kid with a torn gray hoodie heading this direction yesterday. That's pretty thin evidence. It's all we've got. Reaper pocketed his phone. We're not here to cause trouble, officer. We're here to make sure that kid knows he's got family now. Whether he wants it or not. Inside the shelter, Kai pressed his face against the bathroom window, watching the sea of motorcycles below. There were hundreds of them. Hundreds. All wearing the same patch he'd seen on Bear's jacket, a skull with wings, Iron Titans MC, curved above it. His brain couldn't process it. This didn't make sense. Why would they bring an army to find him? He'd saved one of them, shouldn't they just leave him alone? Say thanks and move on. Unless saving Bear had been a mistake. Unless he'd seen something he shouldn't have, or they thought he'd stolen something from the crash site, or... A knock on the bathroom door made him jump. Kai. Marcus's voice. You've been in there 20 minutes. Come on out, man. Jennifer wants to talk to everyone. Kai's throat went dry. About what? About the bikers. They're asking for someone. His heart stopped. Who? That's the weird part. They won't say. Just that it's a teenager who was near Highway 9 last night. A pause. You weren't anywhere near Highway 9, were you? Kai closed his eyes. Lie. He should lie. Say he was at the bus depot all night, never went near the highway. But Marcus had seen his hands. Burned, blistered hands that looked exactly like they'd been pressed against hot metal. Kai. Before he could answer, a loudspeaker crackled to life outside. The sound carried through the bathroom window, clear and strong. Attention, a deep voice, amplified. We're looking for the teenager who saved our brother last night on Highway 9. We know you're scared. We know you ran when the cops came. But you're not in trouble. Kai's legs went weak. Our brother's name is Bear. You pulled him from under a burning motorcycle and saved his life. We're here because of what you did, because you're brave, and because we take care of our own. The voice paused. Kai could hear his heartbeat in his ears. You got a torn gray hoodie. You got burned hands. And you're probably thinking this is some kind of trap. A low chuckle. It's not. We're the Iron Titans MC, and we protect family. As of last night, kid, your family. 300 engines roared to life simultaneously. The thunder was deafening. Then, as one, they cut off again. Silence. Come out and talk to us, the voice said. Please. Marcus stood outside the bathroom door, and when Kai finally emerged, the volunteer's eyes went straight to the torn left pocket of his gray hoodie. "It's you," Marcus whispered. "Jesus, Kai. It's you they're looking for." Kai couldn't speak. His throat had closed up completely. In the common room, Jennifer was trying to maintain order, but 40 teenagers were all talking at once, crowding toward the windows to see the bikers outside. Some looked terrified. Others looked curious. Diego was practically pressed against the glass. Everyone stepped back from the windows. Jennifer's voice cracked with stress. "I need you all to. It's me." Kai's voice was barely audible, but somehow the room went silent. Jennifer turned. "What?" "I'm who they're looking for." Kai pulled his wrapped hands from his pockets. "I was there last night. On Highway 9. I pulled their guy out before his bike exploded." The room erupted. "You're kidding." "Holy shit, Kai. That's actually badass." Jennifer rushed over, her face a mixture of concern and disbelief. "Kai, are you certain? This could be." "I'm certain." He moved toward the door. "I should go talk to them before this gets worse." Marcus grabbed his shoulder. "Wait. We don't know what they want. This could be dangerous. They just said they want to thank me. And you believe that? Kid, use your head. 300 bikers don't show up to say thanks. They show up to send a message." But Kai was already walking toward the front entrance. His hands trembled, partly from fear, partly from pain, partly from something else he couldn't name. Every instinct screamed at him to run out the back, to disappear like he always did. But he was tired of running. Jennifer followed him to the door. "If you're doing this, I'm coming with you. And we're keeping the door open. If anything goes wrong." "Nothing's going wrong," Kai said, though he had no idea if that was true. He pushed open the shelter door and stepped outside. The sight hit him like a physical force. 300 bikers. Maybe more. Arranged in perfect formation, their motorcycles gleaming in the November sun. Every single one of them was watching the shelter entrance. And standing at the front, in a wheelchair pushed by the biggest man Kai had ever seen, was Bear. Even bandaged, even clearly in pain, Bear's presence was commanding. His gray eyes found Kai's immediately, and something shifted in his expression, relief, recognition, something almost like wonder. "Kid," Bear's voice carried across the silence. "You pulled me out of hell." Kai walked forward slowly, aware of Jennifer and Marcus flanking him, aware of the police cars forming a perimeter, aware of 300 pairs of eyes tracking his every move. He stopped 10 feet from Bear's wheelchair. "Your hands," Bear said, noticing the makeshift bandages. "You got burned." "They're fine." "They're not fine." "You lifted a 400-pound motorcycle with bare hands while it was on fire." Bear leaned forward in his wheelchair. "Why'd you run?" The question was gentle, but it hit Kai like a punch. Why had he run? Because that's what he always did. Because staying meant questions, and questions meant social workers, and social workers meant. "Because I thought you'd come after me," Kai said honestly. "I thought maybe I'd seen something I shouldn't have, or you'd think I stole something from the crash, or... So you thought we'd hunt you down?" Reaper's voice cut in, not unkindly. "Kid, we're not the bad guys here. Then why bring 300 people?" "To make sure you understood something," Bear gestured at the assembled bikers. "Every person here came because they heard what you did. They heard a 16-year-old kid walked through fire to save a stranger. And they wanted you to know." A police cruiser screeched to a halt, lights flashing. 2 officers jumped out, followed by a lieutenant with a megaphone. "This is the police. This assembly is creating a public disturbance. You need to disperse immediately." The mood shifted instantly. The bikers didn't move, but Kai could feel the tension ratchet up. Hands moved to handlebars. Engine stayed off, but barely. Reaper stepped forward. "We're not causing trouble. You've got a militia surrounding a shelter full of vulnerable youth." The lieutenant's face was red. "That's enough. Everyone needs to leave. Now." "We leave when we're done," Reaper said calmly. "That's not how this works." More police cars arrived. 8. 10. 12. Officers poured out, forming a line between the bikers and the shelter. Jennifer grabbed Kai's arm. "We need to get you inside." But Bear's voice stopped them. "Wait. Please." The wheelchair-bound biker looked at the police, then at Kai, then at his brothers. "We're not leaving until we know the kid's safe. Until we know he's got somewhere to go, someone looking out for him." The lieutenant raised his megaphone again. "You don't get to make that call. He's homeless." Bear's voice cracked with emotion. "You think we didn't figure it out? The torn hoodie, the fact he was scavenging for cans at midnight, the way he ran from cops? This kid's been on the streets, and he just saved my life. So no, we're not leaving him alone. Not until we know he's okay." Officer Chen stepped forward, lowering the lieutenant's megaphone. "Let me talk to them." She walked toward Kai, her expression unreadable. "Is that true? Are you homeless?" Kai wanted to lie. The truth had consequences: social services, investigations, questions about his family. But 300 bikers were staring at him, and Bear's gray eyes held something that looked almost like hope. "Yeah," Kai said quietly. "I'm homeless." Chen turned to Jennifer. "Does he stay here regularly?" "When there's space. But we're not a residential facility. We can only offer temporary. So he's got nowhere permanent. We're working with social services to find." "How long does that take?" Jennifer hesitated. "Weeks. Sometimes months." The lieutenant stepped forward again. "None of this changes the fact that this assembly is illegal. I'm giving you 5 minutes to disperse, or we start making arrests." Reaper didn't move. Neither did any of the 300 bikers behind him. The standoff hung in the air, fragile as glass. Then Kai did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He walked past Officer Chen, past the police line, and stopped directly in front of Reaper. "I'll talk," Kai said. "But not out here. Somewhere private. Just me and Bear." Reaper studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Marcus, can we use a room inside?" The volunteer looked at Jennifer, who looked at the police, who looked at each other. Finally, Chen spoke. "1 room. 2 bikers maximum, including the one in the wheelchair. Everyone else clears the street. Deal?" Reaper extended his hand to Kai. "Deal." The shelter's small conference room felt even smaller with Bear's wheelchair taking up half the space. Reaper stood by the door, arms crossed, while Jennifer insisted on staying as Kai's advocate. Officer Chen waited just outside, monitoring the situation. Through the window, Kai could see the bikers dispersing, slowly, reluctantly, but dispersing. Engines rumbled to life in waves, and the massive formation began to break apart. But they didn't go far. Just circled the block, staying within range. "Sit down, kid," Bear said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Kai sat, keeping his bandaged hands on the table where everyone could see them. A power move he'd learned on the streets: show you've got nothing to hide, even when you do. "Let me see those," Bear said, nodding at the bandages. "They're fine." "They're not." "Reaper, grab the first aid kit from my bike. The real one, not the pocket garbage." Reaper disappeared and returned a minute later with a professional-grade trauma kit. He set it on the table and stepped back. Bear wheeled himself closer and began unwrapping Kai's right hand. The fabric stuck to the blisters, and Kai hissed in pain as it pulled free. "Second-degree burns," Bear muttered. "Maybe third in places." He looked up at Kai. "You grabbed the exhaust pipe, didn't you? Had to get leverage somehow. You could have lost your hands. Better than watching you burn." Something passed between them, an understanding that didn't need words. Bear cleaned the burns with antiseptic, applied burn gel, and wrapped them properly in sterile gauze. His movements were practiced, efficient. "You've done this before," Kai observed. 20 years in the MC. "You learned field medicine." Bear finished the second hand and sat back. "Now. You gonna tell me why a 16-year-old kid is living on the streets?" Kai's jaw tightened. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." "Why?" "You don't know me. Yesterday I didn't exist to you. Yesterday you weren't the kid who saved my life." Bear's voice softened. "Look, I get it. You don't trust easy. Streets teach you that. But I'm not here to judge, and I'm not here to turn you in. I just want to understand." Kai stared at his newly bandaged hands. The pressure in his chest was building, a year's worth of secrets pushing against his ribs, demanding release. "My dad," he finally said. "That's why." Jennifer leaned forward. "Kai, you don't have to." "Yeah, I do." He looked at Bear. "You want the truth?" "My dad's a drunk. Mean drunk. Started hitting my mom when I was 12. She left when I was 14, just vanished one night. Didn't take me or my brother and sister. Just saved herself." The words came faster now, like a dam breaking. "Dad got worse after she left. He'd come home from whatever bar would still serve him and look for reasons to swing. Forgot to take out the trash. Backhand. Got a B instead of an A. Belt. Talked back. Whatever was closest, remote control, coffee mug, his fists." Reaper's expression had gone stone cold. Bear's hands clenched on his wheelchair armrests. "I could take it," Kai continued. "I was the oldest. I could handle it. But then he started going after Riley. That's my little sister. She's 9. And my brother Danny's only 7". His voice cracked. "I came home one day and found Riley with a black eye. She said she'd walked into a door, but I knew. I knew." Jennifer's hand covered her mouth. "So I started making myself the target. Stayed in his line of sight, talked back, made sure his attention stayed on me. Worked for a while. But then one night he came at Riley with a beer bottle, and I stepped in, and Kai touched his ribs, where a faint scar still ached. He put me in the hospital. 3 broken ribs, punctured lung. Jesus," Reaper breathed. "Social services came, asked questions. I lied. Said I fell down the stairs. Because I knew if I told the truth, they'd take Riley and Danny away, split us up into different foster homes. At least with Dad, we were together." "That's not logic, kid," Bear said gently. "That's survival guilt." "Maybe." Kai's eyes burned, but he refused to let the tears fall. "But after I got out of the hospital, I realized something. As long as I was there, he'd keep using me to get to them. So I left. Packed a bag, walked out, never went back." "You left to protect them," Jennifer said, understanding dawning. "I send money when I can. From recycling, from day labor, whatever I can scrape together. I've got a friend who drops it off, tells Riley and Danny it's from Mom. They don't know I'm still in the city. They think I'm gone, like her." The room was silent except for the distant rumble of motorcycles circling the block. Bear finally spoke. "Where are they now? Riley and Danny?" "Still with him. Still in that house on Mercer Street." Kai's voice hardened. "And before you ask," No, I haven't called the police. I tried once. Know what happened? Cop showed up, talked to my dad for 5 minutes, left. Dad told them I was a troubled kid making up stories. They believed him. Of course they did, Reaper said bitterly. System's broken. So that's why you ran last night, Bear said. Cops show up, they run your name, and suddenly social services is asking questions again. Questions that might lead them to your siblings. I can't let that happen. I can't let them get separated. Bear exchanged a look with Reaper, some silent communication passing between them. Kid, Bear said slowly. What you did, leaving to protect them, that took guts. But you know it's not a permanent solution, right? It's the only solution I've got. Not anymore, Bear leaned forward in his wheelchair. You've got us now. And the Iron Titans don't leave family behind. I'm not your family. You became family the second you pulled me from under that bike, Bear's voice was firm. But here's the thing, we do this right. Legal. Above board. No shortcuts that might make things worse for Riley and Danny. What are you talking about? Reaper spoke up. Half the brothers in the MC came from situations like yours. Abuse, neglect, system failures. We know how this works. And we know people, social workers who actually give a damn, lawyers who take pro bono cases, cops who'll dig deeper than 5 minutes. We can help, Bear said. But you have to let us. And you have to trust that we're not going to make this worse. Kai wanted to believe them. God, he wanted to believe them so badly it hurt. But trust was a luxury he'd learned to live without. Why? He whispered. Why do you even care? Bear reached across the table and gripped Kai's shoulder. Because someone should have cared about me when I was 16 and living in my car. Someone should have cared about Reaper when his old man used him as a punching bag. Someone should have cared about all of us. He squeezed gently. You saved my life, kid. Now let us save yours. The plan came together faster than Kai thought possible. Within 2 hours of leaving the conference room, Bear had made 6 phone calls from his hospital bed, which he'd checked himself out of against medical advice. Reaper had rallied the MC's resources, and suddenly Kai was surrounded by people who actually seemed to know what they were doing. First was Janet Reeves, a social worker in her 50s who arrived at the shelter wearing jeans and a leather jacket. Turned out she was Reaper's cousin and had been fighting the system from inside it for 20 years. Okay, Kai, she said, sitting across from him in the conference room that had become command central. I need you to tell me everything about your father. His name, address, employment, criminal history if you know it. Don't leave anything out. Kai talked for an hour. Janet took notes without judgment, asking clarifying questions, her pen never stopping. Then came Marcus Lau, a family law attorney who rode with the Iron Titans on weekends and fought for abused kids during the week. He was young, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and sharper questions. Has your father ever been formally investigated by Child Protective Services? Once. 2 years ago. A teacher reported bruises on Danny. And? They closed the case. Insufficient evidence. Marcus's jaw tightened. Classic. And you've had no contact with your siblings since you left? I see them sometimes. From a distance. Make sure they're okay. When's the last time you saw them? Kai's throat constricted. Last week. Thursday. Riley had a new bruise on her arm. Danny looked scared. Marcus and Janet exchanged glances. We need to move fast, Janet said. If there's active abuse happening. There is, Kai interrupted. I know there is. By evening, the plan was in motion. Janet filed an emergency petition with Child Protective Services, citing credible evidence of ongoing abuse. Marcus prepared paperwork for a welfare check, this time with enough detail that it couldn't be brushed off. Officer Chen, who'd been monitoring the situation all day, volunteered to personally conduct the welfare check. "I've got 2 kids of my own," she told Kai quietly. "I'll make sure this one doesn't get swept under the rug." The Iron Titans provided something more tangible: transportation. Reaper assigned 4 brothers to shadow Chen's welfare check, staying visible but not interfering. "Cops take things more seriously when they know people are watching," he explained. And then there was Bear, who refused to leave Kai's side despite being able to barely move without pain medication. "You don't have to be here," Kai said as they sat in the shelter's common room, waiting for news. "Yeah, I do," Bear adjusted his leg, wincing. "You sat with me when I was bleeding out on the highway. Least I can do is sit with you now." The call came at 8 p.m. Janet's phone rang, and everyone in the room went silent. She answered, listened, her expression giving nothing away. Then she hung up and looked at Kai. "They're removing Riley and Danny from the home tonight." Kai's world tilted. "What? Why? What happened?" Officer Chen arrived to conduct the welfare check. "Your father was intoxicated and became belligerent when she asked to see the children. When she insisted, he tried to stop her from entering. She called for backup." Janet's voice was steady, professional, but her eyes were soft. "When they finally got inside, they found Riley hiding in a closet with fresh bruises. Danny had a burn mark on his arm, cigarette, from the looks of it." Rage flooded through Kai, hot and blinding. "Where is he? Where's my father?" "In custody. He's been arrested for child endangerment, assault, and resisting an officer." "And Riley? Danny?" "Emergency foster placement. They're being taken to a temporary home tonight, but," Janet held up a hand before Kai could explode. "But we're already working on kinship placement. Do you have any other family? Aunts, uncles, grandparents?" "My mom's sister. Aunt Carol. She lives in Riverside, about 2 hours away." "You have contact information?" "No, but," Kai's mind raced. "She sent a Christmas card 3 years ago. It might still be in the house." Marcus leaned forward. "We'll find her. And if she's suitable and willing, we can petition for the kids to be placed with her instead of foster care." "And you," Janet added. "You're 16, Kai. Still a minor yourself. You need placement too." "I'm fine where I am. Sleeping in an abandoned bus depot isn't fine," she softened her tone. "The shelter can keep you short-term, but we need a real solution." Bear cleared his throat. "He could stay with me." Everyone turned to look at him. "I've got a house. 3 bedrooms. It's approved for emergency kinship placements. I've taken in kids before, back when I was fostering." Bear met Kai's shocked expression. "I know what you're thinking. Biker with a broken leg isn't exactly stable housing, but I've been clean for 12 years, never had a complaint, and I've got references. Plus, you already saved my life. Figure I owe you a roof." "You don't owe me anything," Kai whispered. "Maybe not. But I'm offering anyway." Janet pulled out her phone. "I'll need to run a background check and home assessment, but if everything's in order, I can fast-track emergency placement." She looked at Kai. "This would be temporary, just until we find your aunt or another permanent solution. But it gets you off the streets. What do you say?" Kai looked around the room. At Janet, who'd spent her afternoon fighting for strangers. At Marcus, who'd cancelled his evening plans to draft legal documents. At Officer Chen, who'd stood outside waiting for updates she had no obligation to care about. At the Iron Titans members who'd been rotating through all day, bringing food, offering support, just being present. And at Bear, who was watching him with those steady gray eyes that somehow made Kai feel less alone. "Okay," Kai said. "Okay." The paperwork took another 3 hours. Janet pulled strings, called in favors, and by 11 p.m., Kai had temporary emergency placement approved. As they prepared to leave the shelter, Diego grabbed Kai's arm. "Hey, man. You gonna be okay?" "I think so. That's wild, you know? Yesterday you were nobody. Today you've got a whole biker gang looking out for you." Kai glanced at Bear, who was being helped into Reaper's truck. "They're not a gang. They're family." Diego grinned. "Yeah? You one of them now?" Kai touched his torn hoodie, the one he'd been wearing for 3 months. The one that had been through fires both literal and metaphorical. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe I am." Bear's house was nothing like Kai expected. It was small, sure, a single-story ranch on the east side of town, but it was clean. Organized. The walls were covered with photos of bikers at charity events, toy drives, veterans' rides. A bookshelf held motorcycle manuals next to worn paperbacks. The kitchen actually looked like someone cooked in it. "Guest rooms down the hall," Bear said, maneuvering his wheelchair through the doorway. "Bathrooms got clean towels. You need anything, I'm right across the hall." Kai stood in the living room, backpack hanging from one shoulder, unsure what to do with his hands. I don't really know how this works." "This? Living with someone who's not trying to hurt me." Bear's expression softened. "First rule, you don't have to earn your place here. You're not a guest I'm doing a favor for. You're a kid who needs a safe place to sleep. That's it. But I should help. Cleaning, cooking, whatever. You should focus on being 16." Bear wheeled himself to the kitchen. "When's the last time you did homework? Hung out with friends? Did normal kid stuff?" Kai couldn't remember. "Exactly." Bear opened the fridge, which was surprisingly well stocked. "We'll figure out the details tomorrow. Tonight, you eat, you shower, you sleep. In that order." The next morning, Kai woke to sunlight streaming through actual curtains. For a confused moment, he didn't know where he was. Then he remembered, Bear's house. Safe. He found Bear in the kitchen, attempting to make breakfast one-handed while his broken leg rested on a chair. "Let me," Kai said, taking over the eggs before Bear could protest. They ate in comfortable silence until Bear's phone buzzed. He checked it and smiled. "They found your aunt. Carol Mendez, lives in Riverside, works as a nurse at County General. Janet's already contacted her." Kai's fork froze halfway to his mouth. And she's been looking for you 3 years. Your mom never told her what was happening, she was too ashamed. But Carol knew something was wrong. When Janet explained the situation, she broke down crying. Bear showed Kai his phone. "She's already requested emergency kinship placement for Riley and Danny. Could have them by end of week." Relief crashed through Kai so hard his eyes stung. "They're really getting out? They're really getting out. What about me? What about you? Do I go with them?" Bear set down his phone. "That's your choice. Carol's willing to take all 3 of you. She's got a 4-bedroom house, stable job, clean background. You could be with your siblings again." It was everything Kai had wanted for the past year. His family, together, safe. So why did his chest feel tight? "But?" Kai prompted. "But Riverside's 2 hours away. You'd be starting over, new school, new city, away from everyone here." Bear met his eyes. "Or you could stay. Finish the school year here, visit Riley and Danny on weekends, keep the support network you're building." "I barely have a support network. Kid, you've got 300 bikers who'd ride through hell for you. I'd say that's a pretty solid network." 4 days later, the Iron Titans held a sunrise ceremony at their Riverside clubhouse. Kai stood on the weathered deck overlooking the water, surrounded by more people than he'd ever had in his corner. Bear sat in his wheelchair, still healing but grinning. Reaper stood beside him, holding a folded leather vest. Kai, Reaper's voice carried across the assembled crowd. You walked through fire for one of us. You didn't know Bear. Didn't owe him anything. But you saw someone who needed help, and you didn't hesitate. The morning sun painted the river gold. That's the kind of person we want in our corner. That's family. Reaper unfolded the vest, black leather with a small patch on the back. Not a full MC cut, but something special. The patch read, Honorary Iron Titan, with a small flame embroidered beneath. This doesn't make you a biker, Reaper continued. It makes you something more important, it makes you ours to protect. Always. He draped the vest over Kai's shoulders. The bikers erupted in applause and engine revs. 300 voices calling his name. Kai touched the leather, feeling its weight. It wasn't armor. It wouldn't stop fists or sharp words or the nightmares that still woke him up at 3 a.m. But it was proof. Proof that he wasn't invisible anymore. Proof that someone cared. Bear wheeled up beside him. Looks good on you. I'm staying, Kai said suddenly. In the city. With you. If that's still okay. More than okay. But I want to see Riley and Danny every weekend. I need to know they're safe. Already talked to Carol. She's expecting you every Saturday, Bear smiled. And the MC runs a toy drive through Riverside twice a year. Guess who's coming along? Kai actually laughed. It felt strange, like using muscles he'd forgotten existed. His phone buzzed, a text from Janet. School enrollment completed. You start Monday. Also, Carol wants to video call tonight with R&D. R&D, Riley and Danny. His siblings were safe. He had a place to sleep. He had people who cared whether he lived or died. It wasn't perfect. His hands still ached from the burns. His father was out on bail, though there was talk of serious charges. The nightmares hadn't stopped. But standing on that deck, wearing a vest that marked him as protected, watching 300 bikers celebrate a kid who'd been nobody a week ago. Kai realized something. He'd spent a year trying to save his siblings by disappearing. But maybe the real way to save them was to let himself be saved first. Hey, Bear said quietly. You good? Kai watched the sun rise over the river, painting everything in shades of hope. Yeah, he said, and meant it. I'm good. The Iron Titans roared their engines one more time, the sound echoing across the water like thunder. Like a promise. Like family. And Kai, who'd spent so long walking through fire alone, finally understood what it meant to have people willing to walk through it with him. He wasn't running anymore. He was home.